be seated. Thank you. Good morning, gentlemen, and everyone had a pleasant evening. We continue with the state's presentation today, and in particular the cross-examination of Detective Pizzulo. Detective, you return to the stand and remain under oath.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Russo, you're going to be part of it.
Sorry, Your Honor?
Is it your?
It is, yeah.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Judge.
Morning, Detective. Morning.
Detective, I want to cover some things that you testified to yesterday, if that's okay with you. Yesterday you testified, and if I get something wrong, please tell me that, okay?
Okay.
You testified yesterday that basically you were the lead detective on this case?
Correct.
And how many other officers were involved in investigating this case?
3 directly.
Okay. Who were they?
Detective Iannucci, or Sergeant Iannucci. We had 2 Howland officers, Detective Nick Roberts and Alan Sprocket.
Okay. And in terms of the scene at 64 West 9th Street, you were in charge of that investigation there, correct?
Correct.
And you photographed the scene there?
Myself and Detective Iannucci took photographs.
Okay, and you've seen all the photographs
Correct.
that were taken by either you or Detective Iannucci?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of evidence that was gathered at the house, that was your responsibility as well?
Our combined responsibility, yes.
Okay. Did either of you have the ultimate say in terms of how that was processed or where it went?
I'm sorry?
Did either you or Detective Iannucci have the final say? Was there one guy in charge, I guess is what I'm trying to ask you?
With collaboration with the prosecutor's office, we decided as far as what would be sent to the lab and what would not be.
Okay. So you gathered evidence there, correct?
Yes.
And you labeled evidence?
Yes.
You processed that scene there?
Correct.
And you submitted evidence to BCI as well?
Yes.
And it's fair to say that you work closely with Laswell, Iannucci, right?
Yes.
Even with Attorney Watkins and Attorney Becker and that.
And Dr. Germanic, correct.
You guys collaborate as a group, strategize, that sort of thing?
Yes.
Shared information?
Correct.
Okay. You, as a group, you discussed what evidence to subpoena, correct?
Yeah.
Which warrants to issue, that sort of thing?
As far as warrants or search warrants?
Yeah.
With discussion with the prosecutors, they would decide what warrants would be necessary to continue any other searches. Yes.
Okay. And you didn't see the interview that Claudia gave with Mr. Iannucci, did you?
I did not.
Okay. And while you were in charge of the investigation, you didn't let your team know that you were stealing money from a charity, did you?
You know, Jack, sustain. Mr. Russo, please.
Judge, well, can I approach?
You may approach.
Detective, I'll ask you the question again. While you were in charge of this investigation, you didn't let your team know that you were stealing money from a charity while you were in charge of this investigation, did you?
At the time of this investigation, I was not aware that what was occurring was in violation of the charitable laws.
Okay, and you did not tell them about that, correct?
I did not know that I was doing something wrong.
And that had been going on for 3 years, true?
The charity was established for over 3 years, yes.
Okay. And that was, in fact, the reason you were terminated from the Sheriff's Department?
I was not terminated.
You weren't?
No.
Okay, I'll move on. You issued subpoenas in this case, correct?
I don't issue subpoenas. The prosecutor's office
I'm
does.
sorry, I misspoke. But as part of the investigation, you obtained information from banks, right?
So, your information was subpoenaed from banks, yes.
Okay. You didn't receive any of that information?
Oh, yes.
You reviewed it,
I don't
correct?
remember, but the prosecutor's office receives the information when a subpoena is issued.
That information is shared with
been
you.
shared with us.
So you did review that, correct?
Correct.
How about information from airlines?
The airlines never responded. We found out where she flew. A subpoena was issued to American Airlines, actually, for the additional information regarding the flight from New York to Sao Paulo. They never did. At the time that the arrest affidavit or the prosecutor's warrant for arrest was issued, we had not received that information yet.
Okay. And you had also received information from cell phone providers?
Correct.
Okay. And you personally swore affidavits in this case for the search of the house,
Yes.
as well as the BMW, I believe?
I don't remember if I was the affiant on that one.
Were you
I was
the-
the affiant on the prosecutor's request for an arrest, or for...
Again, I don't want to say anything that's inaccurate. And for the jury's sake, an affidavit is a sworn statement, correct?
Yes.
And that's you saying, these are facts that I swear are true.
Yes.
And that's presented to a judge.
Right.
And in your career as a police officer, you've lied in a sworn affidavit, haven't you?
No.
You haven't?
Overruled. Yes, or answer the question.
Not when you were an officer in Brookfield?
There was a...
Answer the question, yes or no, detective. I just want to know if you lied in an affidavit when you were an officer in Brookfield. I don't need
Do
an
you want the
answer.
circumstances?
No, sir. I want to know yes or no.
I was... Yeah. No, I didn't lie. I did not lie in that affidavit.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk. I'll just move on. We'll talk a little bit about some of the evidence we heard yesterday. At the scene at 64 West 9th, you recovered a half a bottle of booze there, right? Alcohol? Or, I won't say recovered. There was one there, correct?
On the bedroom? In the bedroom,
Yes.
yeah.
Do you remember what that was?
That was a rum of some sort. I don't know.
Okay. And as part of your investigation, you determined that the team collectively, you had information that Claudia had transferred $9,900 to Brazil. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And again, as you stated earlier, the Sky Bank accounts were subpoenaed and reviewed as part of the investigation.
Yes.
And you determined that those accounts were separate accounts, correct?
Right.
Not joint. So Carl had his, and Claudia had her own,
Okay.
right?
Right.
And that $9,900 that was sent to Brazil, that was from Claudia's account, correct?
I believe you're correct, yes.
And not Carl's.
Right.
Okay. And your investigation also revealed that throughout the period of their marriage, she had done that periodically, transferred money to her family in Brazil. Isn't that true?
I don't remember that. I don't recall that.
Well, you reviewed the bank records, didn't you?
I haven't seen them in 11 years. That could be correct. I don't remember.
But you did review Claudia's Sky Bank records for the entire time they were married.
I don't recall if it was of what the period of I don't remember what period of statements we actually subpoenaed down.
Okay, that's fine. Yesterday you testified that Claudia had flown from Pittsburgh to New York
Yes.
following the death of Carl.
Correct.
And I believe you also testified that she had used Carl's Southwest privileges to do that.
Correct.
And as part of your investigation, you subpoenaed information from Southwest.
I don't remember if we subpoenaed that information or if they just provided it without a subpoena.
Okay, but you received that information,
Yes.
correct? And that confirmed that she did, in fact, use his privileges to fly from Pittsburgh to New York.
Correct.
And that same information showed, however, that she did not use those privileges to fly from New York to Brazil. Isn't that true?
That's correct.
Your Honor, I have marks what's marked as Defense Exhibit A. May I approach the witness?
Thank you.
Recognize that.
Can't say that I recognize it, but I can read what it is.
It's part of your file, isn't it?
Yeah, yes.
So you
again.
probably do recognize it as something you recovered.
Right, we would have received from, this is from, this is, I believe this would be the flight voucher from Pittsburgh to New York.
Okay. Is that what it is?
It appears to be, yes.
All right. And that was obtained through your investigation, correct?
Yes.
And that's I'll let you know. And that's a fair and accurate copy of that document you received, correct?
Yes.
And does that document say anything about her using Carl's miles to fly to Brazil?
On date of issue, you see employee pass, yes. That's, I believe, what they indicated was, it's actually down here?
Right, from Pittsburgh to,
Pittsburgh to New York.
but not New York to
Right.
Brazil.
Right.
Thank you. And Detective, as part of your investigation, you learned information that Claudia, following the death of Carl, had made some phone calls to Brazil. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And you had subpoenaed some records. You subpoenaed Claudia's cell phone records as part of your investigation as well, correct?
Right.
Chris? Thank you. And those were records from Singular at the time, correct?
Right.
I'm going to come back to that. I believe I have it wrong. I'll move on. Sorry. Sorry, Judge. Your Honor, may I approach? It's the same thing. Detective, I have what's marked as Defense Exhibit B. Do you mind taking a look at that?
Would have been the, this would be the information we received regarding her cell phone.
Okay, that was a part of your investigation.
Yes.
You gathered those. And those are Claudia Hoerig's cell phone records?
Yes.
I want you to recall, and those have on there, that's a fair and accurate copy of the records you requested, correct?
Yes.
And I want you to look at the date that you alleged that Carl was killed. I want you to look at the afternoon time around 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and you tell the jury for the phone calls to and from Brazil, from her cell phone.
You're referring to the ones that you've marked?
So, basically from there down.
Yeah. Yes.
How many?
9, between the hours of 2:40 or from 2:52 p.m. to 4:49 p.m.
Thank you, sir. And as part of your investigation, you learned that on February 6, 2007, that Claudia had attempted suicide. Isn't that true?
I'm sorry, say that again?
I said, as part of your investigation, you learned that on February 6, 2007, that Claudia had attempted suicide by taking some pills. Isn't that true?
I don't remember how that information came to us, but yes, I recall that.
Well, you pulled the police report for that incident, didn't you?
Yes. Thank you.
And as part of that incident, there was a 911 call made,
Yes.
and you listened to that call?
I believe we did, yes.
Okay. And that call came from Carl, correct?
Yes.
And you talked to the officer who investigated that incident?
I believe we did.
Okay. And through that, listening to that call in your investigation, you learned that basically Carl was unconcerned about that suicide attempt. Isn't that true?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
As part of listening to the 911 call and through your investigation and reviewing the police report, you learned that Carl was unconcerned about the
I'm
suicide
going to
attempt.
object to that. He's asking.
All right, I'll move on. In that phone call, did Carl say that that they were having marital problems?
I'm going to object to that. It's hearsay.
He doesn't have the document in front of him.
He listened to it, Your Honor.
It's hearsay.
Okay.
What's the hearsay exception that this is coming in?
It's a 911 call.
Well, then subpoena it and play it.
I don't need to if it's... I won't argue with you, Chris. I certainly don't want to go down that road. Judge, may I approach? Chris, this is what's marked as Exhibit C. Officer, you don't remember, as part of your investigation, were you left with an impression from listening to the 911 call or reviewing the police report as to Carl's state of mind and what he was saying in that call?
He's asking
Yes or no to that?
Yes or no?
No, I do not.
But a police report was made, correct?
Correct.
If I showed you a copy of that, would that refresh your recollection?
Sure.
May I approach, Judge?
Okay.
Am I reading that? Real quick.
Okay.
And after reading that, were you left with an investigator with any impression of that?
Not from that report, no.
No, not at all.
He was on the phone with her. I wouldn't say that would be unconcerning.
But you listened to the call, correct?
I don't remember the call.
Okay. I'll move on, officer. When you were at the house at 64 West 9th Street, you found a loaded gun, the .357, in a board in the closet,
Yes.
and you photographed that?
Correct.
Chris, these are D through I. I think somebody's in yesterday. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
May.
Thank you. Detective, I have what's marked as defense exhibits D through I. Would you mind taking a look at those?
Okay.
And what are you looking at?
Photographs of the pistol in the wooden 2x4 board that was screwed to the wall,
Okay.
or attached to the wall. And then just, basically all of them were the same. Some were just blown up of what we've already seen.
Okay. Did you take those photographs?
Myself or Detective Minucci would have taken them.
And are those fair and accurate depictions?
Yes, they are.
Of the scene at the time?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And the board that was in that closet that had the pistol in it, you never recovered any sort of string or anything from that closet?
No.
Okay. And there was no string tied to the trigger of that gun, correct?
Correct.
And there was no string tied to the doorknob of the closet?
Correct.
Just a gun and a board, right?
Right.
Did you photograph a stool or a chair that was in that closet?
Did not.
No? And that .357 that was in the board in the closet, that was the gun that was used to shoot Carl, correct?
Yes.
And as far as you know, that gun was left there by Claudia, correct?
Correct.
You didn't have to search for the murder weapon in this case at all, did you?
Did not.
She made no effort to conceal it as far as you can tell.
Correct. Correct.
She didn't take it with her to Pittsburgh?
No.
Didn't throw it in a lake?
Nope.
She just left it there for you to find it, right?
Yes.
Okay. And also as part of your investigation, you had learned that Carl and Claudia were having some marital problems. Isn't that true?
That's what was related to us through family, yes.
Okay, but that you did learn that as part of your
Yes.
investigation? Okay. These are J. I'm sorry? Oh, that's all right. I'm going to. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
May.
Thank you. Detective, I have what's marked as the defense exhibits J through M. Do you mind taking a look at these and letting us know what they are, if you know?
Photographs of books?
Those books at the house at 64
Yes.
West 9th? And did you take those photographs?
Myself or Detective Unishi would have taken them, thank you.
And those pictures, are those very accurate copies?
Yes, they are.
Of what you saw at the scene there? And those books, if you, I'll actually give these back to you so you can actually take a look at some of these. Fair to describe those books as sort of self-help relationship books?
That's a fair, yeah, that's a fair statement.
Based on the title?
Sure.
Men are from Mars, women from Venus. That's a pretty common one, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
Men are from Mars, women from Venus.
None of them that I've heard or read, but you could be right by the title.
Pretty fair.
Sure.
And are you aware that the subtitle of the book, False Intimacy by Schoenberg, is Understanding the Struggle of Sexual Addiction? Did you happen to look at that book?
Which one?
The one by Schoenberg, False Intimacy?
I didn't read any of them.
Did you look at it?
Looked at the titles. I didn't dole into the context of the books.
Okay, and there's another one, Forging Veil Relationships, When a Mate Wants Out, those sort of things. All self-help books, true?
They appear to be by title, yes.
Okay, so I'll take those off.
Sure.
And knowing that there was issues in the marriage, as part of your investigation, did you look into any counseling records or anything for the couple?
I don't believe so.
No? And as part of the investigation, I'm going to move on to something else here. There were some bullet holes in the floor in the living room there. Isn't that true?
Yes.
Okay. And Chris. Thanks. Judge, may I approach? Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, this is marked as Defense Exhibit O. Do you mind taking a look at that?
Okay.
What are we looking at there?
The holes in the floor, and we were trying to establish the direction in which they came.
Okay, that's a fair and accurate depiction of the scene.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. And in this photograph, there's some what appear to be coat hangers and holes in the floor.
Correct.
Did you put those in there?
I did.
Did Detective Yanucci put those in there? I mean, you put them both in there? Let me just ask you that.
Yes.
Okay. And what are you trying to accomplish by sticking the coat hangers and the holes in the floor?
Using them to point back to the general direction in which the shots were fired.
Okay, and you have no formal training as a crime scene reconstructionist, do you?
I did.
You
Part
did?
of evidence tech training, the crime scene reconstruction was a module in it.
Okay, and you've never testified as an expert in that area, correct?
I'm sorry?
You've never testified as an expert in that area, though, have you?
Not as an expert, no.
Okay. In your, you recall swearing an affidavit in this case for the search warrant on, I'm trying to get the date here, on March 29th at the house at 64 West 9th?
Yes.
And in that affidavit, paragraph 45, do you recall saying the following? On March 29th, 2007, Affian obtained a search warrant from the Trumbull County Common Police Court for the Hoerig residence in order to inventory the personal property of Claudia. After searching rooms of the home, it is evident she left quite suddenly from the marital residence, leaving over 900 personal items behind. Do you remember writing that or swearing that out in that affidavit?
Yes.
Okay. Chris. I'm sorry, that was on page 12, paragraph 45.
Oh, no, but you're not marking it.
No. It's already in, I think. No, you guys didn't put it in. Thank you. Your Honor, may I approach? Detective, I have what's marked as Defense Exhibit S. You want to take a look at this?
Okay?
Do you know what that is?
I believe there was a count that we made of items that were left behind or present in the home.
Okay, those are actually items taken from the homes?
We did not take them.
Okay.
We just counted them.
What are those items?
Do you want me to read it? Or?
Sure.
Okay, 59 dresses, 350 tops or shirts. It's basically a categorized list of clothing items that we believed were Claudia's and left behind.
Other than the tops and the shirt, what else you have?
113 pairs of pants, 77 pair of shoes, 15 intimates, lingerie, 19 business suits, 12 coats, 69 sweaters, 61 pairs of underwear, 100 bras, 25 pantyhose, 49 pairs of socks, and 20 suit jackets, a total of 969 items plus 2 tiaras.
Okay. And that piece of paper, that's a fair and accurate copy of the inventory from that search?
Correct.
So all those items were left behind,
Yes,
and you believe all those items belong to Claudia?
that's what we believed, yes.
Okay. That would also demonstrate she might have been in a hurry to get out of there, true?
I'm sorry.
That would also indicate she might be in a hurry to get out of the house, leaving all that behind, in your experience as a detective?
Well, that would indicate that she left those items behind. The speed at which she left I don't believe had anything to do with the count.
But you already swore in an affidavit that you believe she did, in fact, leave in a hurry.
We believe, yes, she left.
Well, those are your words, correct?
Correct, they are.
So I just asked you if leaving all those other things behind would be evidence of your theory that she left.
Be one factor in it, yes.
Okay. Chris, I have a few more here. Okay. Your Honor, may I approach the witness? Thank you. Detective, I have what's marked as defense exhibits T3Z. Take a look at those, please, and let us know if you don't care.
These are photographs of the clothing items that we had made a count of, mostly from the basement and in one closet. Yes,
Did you, detective, need to take those photos?
yes,
And those are fair and accurate?
They are.
As seen at the time?
yes.
And in those photographs, she left behind jewelry, correct?
Yes,
Makeup,
yes,
medicine,
correct.
body, facial products, that sort of thing?
Yes,
Okay. And that would also probably indicate to you in your experience that she left out of there in a hurry, true?
one of the factors, yes. I suppose you could say that.
Thank you. I want to move on as to the location and the condition of Carl's body. That body was covered up with a tarp and a comforter, correct?
Yes,
And your investigation, that it didn't show that there was, you found no evidence that that body had been moved,
correct.
correct? So no evidence that it was dragged to another location,
No,
taken outside,
no,
really tampered with at all, other than the tarp, correct?
correct.
Okay. And also as part of your investigation, you seized 2 computers from the residence, didn't you?
Yes,
A laptop and a desktop?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And those computers were sent to BCI?
Correct.
Will you tell the jury what BCI is? I'm not sure if we've covered that at this
It's a
point.
division of the Attorney General's office in the state of Ohio. It's BCI standing for the Bureau of Criminal Investigation.
And that's an arm of the attorney?
It's actually BCI and I.
Right. I thought they dropped the last I, but I'm not
They
sure.
may have.
And that's an arm of the Attorney General's office, correct?
Yes,
The investigative end of their office.
yes,
In a lot of criminal cases, local police will send evidence off to them for analysis, right?
they are the crime lab for the state,
So,
or they manage the crime lab.
right, so they look at all sorts of things, fingerprints, DNA, right?
Yes,
And in this case, they examine the hard drives of those computers. Isn't that true?
that is true.
And you received the results of that analysis, right?
Yes,
And you reviewed those?
we did.
Okay. And the results that you got back from BCI, that included web history from the computers?
It would have.
So web searches, that sort of thing?
Yes,
Documents and all, basically a whole lot of stuff from the hard drive, true?
right.
And you learned from that report and from your investigation that Claudia had in fact searched for flights to Brazil, correct?
Yes,
And that search query was done after the shooting and not before. Isn't that true?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And as part of that investigation, you also learned that the night before the shooting, she had searched the web for suicide, right?
I believe that was one of the web searches, yes.
Suicide by gun.
I don't recall the exact, if you have the analysis, I'd be glad to look at it, but I don't remember the particular topic. But yes, there was something
Along those lines?
Along those lines, yes.
Okay. Recoil, do you remember that one in particular?
I do not.
Okay. And you didn't find anything that said murder by gun, correct?
I did not.
Right. Did you find any internet searches that said how to get away with murder?
No,
How to escape?
no,
How to plan a murder?
no,
How to dispose of a body?
no.
Okay. And also through your investigation, it became clear to you that Claudia had no family in the area. Isn't that true?
That's true.
No real friends?
Correct.
Okay. And through your investigation, you also learned that when Claudia lived in New York, she had her own apartment. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And that apartment was valued at about $300,000?
I don't recall that, but
You don't remember that part?
not that part, no.
Okay. And you also learned that she rented that apartment to move to Newton Falls, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you also knew that she was an accountant when she worked or lived in New York. Isn't that true?
I don't remember the exact field. I knew she was I remember it being the financial field.
Okay. And you learned that she quit that job to move here to be with Carl, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yesterday you talked a little bit about the Subaru that was in the driveway.
Yes.
And through your investigation, there were guns in that Subaru, correct?
Right.
And through your investigation, you learned that those guns were put in that truck because of her suicide attempts. Isn't that true?
I don't know that to be true. I don't recall that. I don't recall that.
Okay. You didn't receive information from any source that that's why those guns were put in there as part of your investigation?
I don't remember that. I'm not saying that what you're saying is not true. I don't remember
You
that.
just don't recall?
I don't recall.
Okay. And you were aware, though, that she had attempted suicide twice, correct?
Once for sure. I remember. I don't recall the second one.
Okay. And she had threatened to kill herself with a gun before that. You were aware of that, correct?
Again, I'm sorry. I don't remember the specifics of that.
If you don't remember, you don't remember?
I don't remember.
And you were in charge of this investigation, though, right?
Right. 12 years ago.
Okay. Did you review your notes or anything before you came in to testify?
I reviewed some photographs. I reviewed the affidavit.
Okay. And you were aware, after the incident where Claudia had taken the sleeping pills, through your investigation, you learned that she wrecked her car?
Right. Part of the same event.
Right. And she was hospitalized, correct?
Correct.
And at that time, I think you testified yesterday that you learned that Carl was looking to rent a house.
I didn't testify to that.
That was not your testimony? Were
No.
you aware of that as part of your investigation?
Yes.
Okay. And that was, he had made a deposit or something like that. Are you aware of that?
That wasn't part of my testimony.
I'm asking if you're aware of that as part of your investigation.
I believe that was part of the file. I don't recall.
Okay, and that was, do you remember how many days after she was released from the hospital?
I do not.
You don't recall?
No.
Was it a month?
I don't recall.
You have no idea?
I don't remember.
If I told you 2 weeks, would that sound right?
It could be.
Okay.
I honestly, I don't remember.
Okay. Also yesterday, you testified when we were looking at some photographs of the injuries to Carl. You testified that you perceived some of those as entrance or exit wounds. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you don't have a medical degree, correct?
No, I do not.
And you're not a medical examiner,
I am not.
not a coroner.
I am not a coroner.
You know, you could have surprised me with a yes. But, so it's safe to say that in any case you've ever testified in before, you've never been qualified as an expert to testify about those matters. Is that true?
I have testified numerous times regarding crime scene analysis. I worked closely with Dr. Germanic for most of my career, most of his time here, actually up until my leaving from the time he got here.
Right.
We were very closely involved with most death investigations that occurred that were unnatural in the county. So my training experience came from direct knowledge that he provided to me through his years of being a forensic pathologist. But do I have a degree? No, I do not.
Okay. So things like where he would always, the numbers point a certain direction to indicate orientation, those sort of things that
Yeah.
you're talking about from your experience with Dr. Germanic.
Correct.
But you're not qualified as an expert to determine what's an entrance and exit wound, isn't that true?
Have I received the documentation? No. Have I seen hundreds of entry wounds, hundreds of exit wounds? Do I understand the physical part of what happens to the skin, whether it's an entrance wound or an exit wound? I have that experience.
I'm not trying to minimize your training, and I know that you have a lot of experience in the field. I'm simply asking, you've never testified as an expert in court of law.
I've never been testified as an expert.
Okay. May I have a moment, Judge? Detective, you'd spoken about your time with Dr. Germanic, and you worked closely with him for many years. How many different homicides do you think you worked with him on?
Directly and indirectly, from 1996 to 2008, probably nearly every homicide that occurred in Trumbull County, I had some part of, whether it would be as a part of the homicide task force, processing the body, processing the crime scene, or actually being a part of the investigation as far as interviews and such. So to put a number to it, I greater than 50 over those years.
Unfortunately, a lot.
Yes.
And I think everyone knows Dr. Germanic was excellent at what he did. And in this case in particular, he did the autopsy in this case, correct?
Yes.
You actually witnessed that?
Correct.
Took photographs of that?
Yes.
He issued a report, correct? Did you have a chance to review that?
At the time, yes. I did not review it for this.
Okay, and Dr. Germanic, in his report, there was no mention about order of gunshots, correct?
There's really no way to establish order, if they happen within a close proximity to each other.
Right, in terms of time.
Right.
But he wasn't, in his report, he never says this one, that one, this first, second.
They're
third.
labeled A, B, C by way of identification, not by way of sequential order.
Right, and also in his report, he didn't indicate where Carl was when he was shot, true? Sitting, standing, running?
No, we can come to some conclusions by blood patterns and blood, things like that.
None of that's in his report, though, right?
None in his report, correct.
Okay, and I'm talking in this case. He offered absolutely no opinion in that report, or to you, as to whether someone was sitting or standing, correct?
Correct.
As to whether Carl was sitting or standing when he was shot?
No, it would be irrelevant to the fact that he was shot.
It's just, in your experience, that's just not something he did.
Correct.
Right?
Right, that's up to the crime scene investigators, not the pathologist.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you, Detective.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Pizzulo, your training and expertise with the Trumbull County Sheriff's Department was crime scenes, correct?
Correct.
And some interviews and basically investigation.
Yes.
Please tell this jury, was there any blood at 64 West 9th Street, Newton Falls, Ohio, in Trumbull County, at the top of those stairs?
There was not.
Was there any blood on the first, second, third, fourth, fifth steps as we went down those steps?
The only blood that we discovered was that directly around the body and under the body.
Where he was at the bottom of the steps is the only place there was blood.
Right, on the floor of the living room.
And if there had been blood, what would you have done?
We would have photographed it. We would have cut the carpeting and taken it for analysis.
And all of the photographs we have in this case show that the blood was basically around the body where he lay there at the bottom of the steps.
Correct.
I have nothing further. Oh, Your Honor. Briefly, Your Honor. There were some photographs presented both by the defense and the prosecution. You initially used some coat hangers, and then eventually you had some strings. You testified yesterday were strings, correct?
Correct.
And they were basically showing the angle that went through those shots to the basement.
Correct. The approximate direction of which the shots
right.
came from. Where along that string, we can't determine. Because the string could be, all the way up to the ceiling of the second floor. But somewhere along that line, in a pretty close proximity, that's where the rounds came from.
All right. I have nothing further.
Mr. Rizzo?
Nothing, Judge. Thank you.
All right, you may step down. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Call that statement. Next witness.
Your Honor, the state would call Kevin Anderson of ATF.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony that you give to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Have a seat. Thank you. Call the photo. What's your name?
Kevin Anderson.
Yes.
Okay. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Kevin Anderson.
And Mr. Anderson, where are you employed?
I'm employed for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. I work at the National Tracing Center in Martinsburg, West Virginia.
And what are your duties at that location?
I have three main responsibilities. The bulk of my work is preparing certifications for court, like what we have today, going to testify in court on those. And then I also oversee our International Tracing Department, and I oversee our Law Enforcement Tracing Department.
All right. And can you please tell this jury what it is that you're referring to when you talk about tracing firearms?
When we trace a gun, the gun comes in, well, not the physical gun, the information will come in from law enforcement. It's recovered at a crime. They'll say, hey, I need you to trace this Smith & Wesson. Here's the serial number, here's the model. And then we'll go through the process of contacting Smith & Wesson and see what they did with the gun, who they sold it to. Then we'll go to the next step in the process, usually a wholesaler, and then it goes to the retail level. We will contact each federal firearms licensee along the way to find out who they sold the gun to. When we finally get to the retail level where they sell to an individual like you or I, they'll have paperwork that that individual filled out, and we'll either obtain a copy of that or we'll get the information, some way, shape, or form, fax, email, over the phone.
Now, there are some firearms that are not required or are not reported to your agency when there's a sale or transaction. Is that correct?
Sure.
All right. Those would be between basically private sellers. If I were to sell my gun to Detective Yanucci and he comes over and I say, hey, you want to buy this gun? He says, yeah, here's $500. I'm not under any obligation to contact ATF or to create any form of paperwork, correct?
No, you're not.
All right. So you're only dealing with what we call federally licensed or federal firearms dealers that are licensed, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, what is your role in keeping the records at the National Tracing Center? Are you a record keeper there?
I'm called the records custodian.
All right.
I don't personally, just me, keep the records. The records are only sent to us when a federal firearms licensee goes out of business. So the ATF does not have every record of every sale all the time. We only get the records when that company goes out of business, and then they're required to send their records to us, and we house them at our facility. So when we get those records in, we will organize them, get them in chronological order the best we can, and then we'll image them, store that image digitally so we can find it a little quicker, and then we dispose of the original forms.
All right. And pursuant to a request made by the Trumbull County Sheriff's Department, I believe you were requested, first of all, to do a trace on a firearm. Is that correct?
Yes, a trace did come into the tracing center.
Okay. And can you explain to this jury what a trace is?
A trace, we'll just use this for example. The Smith & Wesson requests came in. So what we did was we went again to Smith & Wesson. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, this gun then went to W.L. Balmer, which is a wholesaler in Ohio, and then went to Slugmaster. So we contacted everybody, find out what they did with it. Slugmasters at the time was out of business, so we had their records. We looked through the records, found the paperwork matching up to the purchase of that serial number, and then we take that information and comprise a report and give it back to the requesting law enforcement agency.
Okay. So I'm going to hand you what has been marked previously as States Exhibits 81 and 82. And I'm going to have you look, first of all, at States Exhibit 82. And if you can tell me what States Exhibit 82 is, I'd appreciate it.
This is a certification on a firearms trace summary report.
And when you say certification, there is a certification that you are, in fact, and a seal on there that you are, in fact, a custodian of those records and you are entitled to, that you require, you oversee the keeping of those records, correct?
Correct.
All right. And can you tell us, particularly with respect to that trace, what gun was traced and what can you tell us about the gun, the make, model, and serial number? Yeah, you can pull that out, yeah.
This was a trace done on a Smith & Wesson Model 60 caliber .357 revolver.
All right. And do you know the serial number? Would that be on there?
It is. Serial number CJT0901.
All right. And that record and all those records there are fair and accurate copies of the original. They're kept in your custody.
Correct.
Okay. And if you could then look at States Exhibit number 81, please. And by the way, both of those documents, I believe, are 5 pages in length, correct?
Sounds about right. I can count them if you like.
Yeah, could you let me?
Yes.
Okay. And with respect to States Exhibit 81, what is States Exhibit 81?
This is the certified copy of an ATF Form 4473, which is a form that's filled out at the time of purchase.
All right, so when someone goes to a licensed or federally licensed firearm dealer, they are required to fill that out, and the store is required to fill that out, correct?
Yes, sir.
Generally, then, those records are, and you've already testified, if the business goes out of business, they end up and kept in your custody and control.
Correct.
And is that the case with the location where that firearm was purchased?
Yes.
All right. So those records are now kept, and they were at the time when we requested you to trace that, they were kept in your custody and care.
Yes.
And that certification indicates that?
Yes.
Are those items a fair and accurate copy of the form that was required to be filled out and is now in your custody and care?
Yes.
All right. And again, could you please tell us the make, model, and serial number of that firearm?
Smith & Wesson, Model 60, 357 revolver.
And do you have the serial number on it?
I do. CJT 0901.
Is that the same firearm that the trace was requested on and indicated in the paperwork in State's Exhibit 82?
Yes.
All right. Does that paperwork that you have in front of you in State's Exhibit 81, does that tell you not only who sold it, correct? Mm-hmm. Where was it sold from?
Yes.
Where was it sold from?
Oh, sorry. Slugmasters.
And do you know where Slugmaster's address on there?
Yes, it is 3028 State, I believe that's Road 5 in Leavittsburg, Ohio.
All right, and that's Ohio?
Yeah.
And the individual who purchased that firearm, is that individual's name on there?
It is.
And what is the individual's name that purchased that?
Claudia Christina Bolte.
And does it say what date that that firearm was purchased?
March 10th, 2007.
And does the date of birth and social security number of that person appear on that document?
It does.
All right. Can you tell us the date of birth and social?
Date of birth would be August 23rd, 1964. Social security number 127764599.
All right. I'm going to hand you what's been marked for purpose of identification in this case as State's Exhibit number 1. And if you want to check and make sure that that firearm is clear.
It is.
All right. Does that firearm have a serial number located on it?
It does.
All right. And where is that serial number located at?
It's in here in what we call the cradle, which is a part of the frame.
All
right
right.
on the inside of the cylinder.
So you have to open the cylinder to see the serial number.
Correct.
All right. Can you read that serial number that's on State's Exhibit number 1?
CJT 050901.
And is that make and model and serial number the same as the paperwork in State's Exhibits 81 and 82?
It is.
Okay. Thank you. Now, when that paperwork is filled out initially, it is submitted to ATF before the purchase is completed. I'm referring to the paperwork in State's Exhibit 81.
The paperwork is not submitted, but there is a NICS check that is done, yes.
All right. And the NICS check is done through ATF?
Yes.
And what is the NICS test for?
It is to check for felony records or any required mental health stays or holdings.
So you would have an ATF the ability, if someone's, and I want you to explain to the jury, someone fills that out, they don't forward the paperwork to you, but they contact ATF, correct?
Correct. They don't contact our facility, but it is through
It's
the
a different
ATF,
facility,
yes.
but it's not your area, but it goes to ATF.
Correct.
And what is it that they do there at that other facility?
They run their name and social security number, and they're looking for felonies mostly to make sure they're not prohibited from purchasing a firearm.
And you also said something about mental illness?
Correct. It would have to be a court-appointed mental stay. It's
Okay.
voluntarily, that's not recorded. That's
So if I go into the hospital today and say, well, I think I'm crazy, and then I get back out a couple days later, there's no record of that ATF can trace, correct?
That's correct.
Right. You're looking for court orders such as a probate court that had someone committed that was filed, and then that would go to your ATF, not your physical location, correct?
correct.
And that would prohibit someone from purchasing this gun?
Correct.
Okay. Your Honor, I have no further questions. Mr. Anderson, these gentlemen may have some questions for you.
Hi, Mr. Anderson.
Hi.
I think we've met before, but I'm not sure. I'm Dave Russo. I just have a couple simple questions for you.
Okay.
Your testimony today is that that gun was purchased by someone named Claudia Hoerig, correct?
Correct.
And that was purchased from Slugmasters?
Correct.
Okay. Do you think the ATF is good at what they do?
I'm good at what I do. I'm not going to speak for everybody else.
Okay. If there were a problem with that NIC forms, some bad stuff, some background information that would trigger an alarm, you guys probably would catch it, wouldn't you?
I can't speak to the NICS department.
Okay. Would you catch it? Is that just not, you're just custodian of records, you don't do that sort of thing?
No, sir.
Okay. That's all I have.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state will call Andy Chappel. And if I could have just a minute or two, I've got to get some exhibits on over here.
Andrew Chappel, Chappell.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right. Would you please introduce yourself to this jury?
Andrew Chappel,
And you might want to, if you can pull that a little bit closer. There you go. All right. Say it again.
Andrew Chappel,
All right. Andrew, where are you employed at?
the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, commonly referred to as BCI.
And can you please tell this jury what your occupation or profession is there at BCI?
I am a forensic scientist assigned to the firearms section.
And can you please tell us how long you've been employed there?
17 years.
And what are your duties at BCI?
I examine firearms to determine if they are operable and functioning as designed. I examine fired ammunition components, comparing them to each other to determine if they were fired from a single firearm. When a firearm is submitted, comparing those to test fires to determine if they were fired from that particular firearm. I also restore serial numbers that have been ground off of firearms, ATVs, motorcycles, etc.
All right. And could you please tell this jury what your educational background is that's prepared you for that position?
I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Hampden-Sydney College, a master's degree in forensic science from the University of Alabama at Birmingham. I completed an internship with the firearms section of the Virginia Division of Forensic Sciences, and I completed a year of on-the-job training at BCI and have attended conferences and seminars as available since.
All right. And are you a member of any professional organizations or associations?
I represent the state of Ohio on the NIBIN Users Congress. And NIBIN is a database that we use to enter cartridge cases from test fires and evidence to determine if there's an association between previously and associated crimes.
And have you previously testified in the field of firearms identification here in the state of Ohio or any other state?
Yes, I have.
All right. And in fact, you've testified in this county before previously, correct?
Yes, I have.
And you have been declared an expert witness numerous times,
Yes.
not only in this county, but throughout the state of Ohio?
Yes.
All right. Your Honor, I'd move to have Mr. Chappel qualified as an expert, and if defense counsel wants to inquire the right.
No.
If you consider an expert, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Chappel, first of all, will you tell this jury what exactly firearms identification is?
It is the identification of fired ammunition components to the firearm that fired them.
And what is it that makes firearms identification possible?
During the manufacturing process, there are microscopic markings that are imparted into the metal surfaces of the firearm that are unique to that gun. And during firing, because of the pressure that's involved from detonating the cartridge, those markings are transferred onto the ammunition components.
All right. And specifically, then, you were able to take, if you had a known firearm and known cartridge casings and known bullets or projectiles, you were able to compare those to the firearm and determine whether or not they were fired through that firearm, correct?
Correct.
All right. And I'm going to refer you specifically to a case that you were presented to, or I'm sorry, actually presented to you, and it is your case number, and I realize we all have different case numbers, but back in 2007, you were submitted what you gave your lab as 0760493. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
All right. I'm going to hand you a few items here, and there are some gloves there to the right or left of you. There are some gloves. I could probably use the clear ones. And I'm going to hand you a pair of scissors here, and I'm going to ask you to look at some exhibits. Maybe before we do that, I'll show you the ones that you don't need the gloves for. Save you the hassle. Okay. I'm going to hand you State's Exhibit number 1. Do you recognize State's Exhibit number 1? And if you do, please tell the jury how you recognize State's Exhibit number 1.
Yes, I do. It contains a BCI evidence barcode label, which contains the BCI item, case number, item number, date of submission, and the investigating agency. It also has my initials across the tape where I sealed the evidence at the conclusion of my examination.
All right. Now, inside of that item, and we've opened that here for testimonial purposes with other witnesses, you see a firearm in there.
Yes, I do.
And how can we tell that, and there's also a bag in there that's marked, I believe, as State's Exhibit 1A. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
All right. Can you tell us if you recognize State's Exhibit number 1, the physical firearm itself, and the baggie marked as 1A?
Yes, I do.
And how do you recognize them?
The firearm is marked with case number, date, and my initials, and the envelope is marked with my handwriting and my initials across the tape where I sealed it.
And obviously we've opened those up previously since you last saw them.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I'll take those. I'm now going to show you what's been marked for purposes of identification as State's Exhibit 1B. State's Exhibit 1B contains 5 envelopes. And I'm going to ask if you recognize State's Exhibit 1B.
Yes, I do.
All right, and again, tell the jury how you recognize State's Exhibit 1B.
Again, it contains the BCI evidence label and my initials across the tape where I sealed it.
All right, and I probably should have asked you this before. State's Exhibit 1 is a firearm, correct?
Correct.
What was State's Exhibit 1A?
The test fires that I generated from firing
All right.
the revolver.
And what is State's Exhibit 1B?
1B contains 5 cartridges.
All right. Were those cartridges that were previously fired before they got to you?
No, they were not.
They were cartridges you fired?
No, these are unfired.
Oh, they're unfired. They're live rounds.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to hand you what's been marked for purposes of identification as State's Exhibit. I'm going to hand you what's been marked for purpose of identification as State's Exhibits 3, A, B, and C, and ask if you recognize that.
Yes, I do.
All right, please tell the jury how you recognize that.
The BCI evidence sticker as well as my initials where I sealed the package.
Okay, sorry about that. All right. All right. Mr. Chappel.
Here, Chris, these ones are good.
Okay.
Try these.
I'm not having much work. Good luck. I hope I didn't unplug you.
Good. Nope, it's fine.
Now, Mr. Chappel, you may want to put your gloves on as I'm doing now at this point. Okay. Thank you. I think that's the size for me. Thank you. Let's see if I can get this one. Thank you, Don. Very much better. Okay, I'm going to show you what you've previously identified as State's Exhibit 3, A, B, and C. Just to be clear, your lab, you sometimes give items different numbers than what we use, correct?
Correct.
All right, so this is actually your item number 4 at BCI.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now I'm going to open this up. And inside of here, we have 3 items that have been marked as 3A, 3B, and 3C. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Do you recognize those items?
Yes, I do.
And how do you recognize those 3 items?
My initials across the seal where I closed the bag.
All right. I'm going to hand you State's Exhibit 4 and ask if you recognize State's Exhibit 4.
Yes, I do.
And how do you recognize State's Exhibit 4?
The BCI evidence sticker and my initials where I sealed the package.
And do you know what State's Exhibit 4 is?
Yes.
What is State's Exhibit 4?
It contains bullet fragments.
Okay. I'm going to open that up. And it's your item number 6?
Yes.
All right. I'm handing you what's inside of State's Exhibit 4. We also put a State's Exhibit 4 on that, correct?
Correct.
And what is State's Exhibit 4?
It is a smaller envelope containing the fragments.
All right. And do you know where those fragments came from?
I believe it was marked recovered from under the body.
Okay. I'm going to hand you what's been marked for State's purpose of identification as State's Exhibit 5. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what is State's Exhibit 5?
It contains more bullet fragments.
And how do you recognize it?
The BCI item number, as well as my initials where I sealed it.
And your item number is number 5.
Correct.
Okay. Contained in 5 is a smaller envelope, marked State's Exhibit 5.
Yes.
And again, you recognize that how?
My initials where I sealed that envelope.
And finally, we have State's Exhibit number 6. Do you recognize State's Exhibit number 6?
Yes, I do.
All right, and how do you recognize that?
The BCI evidence sticker and my initials where I sealed the packaging.
All right, and that's your item number 19.
Correct.
Okay, I'll open this up very quickly. And the contents of State's Exhibit number 6 contains smaller envelopes containing 6A, 6B, 6C, 6D, and 6E. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And every one of those you recognize as how?
My initials where I sealed the envelope.
All right. Now, with respect to all of those items, State's Exhibits 1, 2, 3A, B, C, 4, 5, and 6, A, B, C, D, and E, did you perform an analysis or testing on those items?
Yes, I did.
All right. Please relate to this jury what you did with those items.
First, I examined the submitted revolver, examining it for any structural defects or modifications that would make it unsafe to fire. I checked the safety mechanisms to make sure that they were working properly, and test fired the firearm 4 times.
Okay. So the firearm worked properly as it should?
Yes, it did.
All right. And then what did you do?
I examined the submitted fired cartridge cases, noting the characteristics present on them.
That would be State's Exhibit 6, A, B, C, D, and E. Is that correct?
I think we're up to F.
F, I'm sorry, an F, yes.
State's Exhibit 6 has 5 fired cartridge cases and 1 cartridge. I compared the cartridge cases to test fired cartridge cases that I generated from the revolver. I do that using a comparison microscope, which is essentially 2 microscopes connected by an optical bridge that allows me to look at 2 objects side by side at the same time.
And what determination did you make regarding those items?
That the 5 fired cartridge cases were all fired in the submitted revolver.
Okay. And then you went ahead and I believe you looked at the projectiles and the fragments that were marked as 3A, 3B, and 3C. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what did you do with those, and what comparison did you make?
I first examined each of the bullets and fragments, taking note of their characteristics, and then compared those to the test fires that I had generated from the submitted firearm.
And with respect to the projectile number, it's our State's Exhibit 4, it was a projectile under the body. Did you make a comparison of that item?
Yes, I did.
And finally, State's Exhibit 5, the projectile fragment from the basement. Did you make a comparison to that item?
Yes, I did.
And can you please relate to this jury the findings that you found between States Exhibits 1, 1A, 1B, 2, 3A, 3B, 3C, 4, 5, and then 6A, B, C, D, E, and F?
Of the fired bullets and fragments, there were 2 recovered from the body, 1 from underneath the body, and 1 from the basement that all had matching barrel engraved striations with the test fires I generated using the submitted pistol. And that means that those were fired from that revolver. The remaining fragments did not have markings suitable for comparison, and so I wasn't able to make any further conclusion with them.
But you weren't able to exclude them either, is that what you mean?
Correct.
Okay. So with particular attention to the State's Exhibit number 4, the projectile from under the body of Carl Hoerig, you were able to determine that that State's Exhibit 4 was in fact fired from State's Exhibit number 1?
One of those fragments, yes.
One of the fragments was fired there, okay. And what you did then, and just so the jury understands, and I'm not sure if we explained this correctly, or no, we haven't explained it yet. You touched upon it, but when a bullet is fired through a gun, what is the distinction? How can you determine that bullets and projectiles are fired from one gun to the next gun? What makes it unique? What makes each firearm unique?
First, I start with comparing what are called the class characteristics. And those are going to be things that are going to be consistent through a wide range of guns. That would be the caliber, the number of lands and grooves, whether they twist to the left or right, and how wide they are. Lands and grooves are kind of like the rumble strip down the side of the highway, but they are cut into the barrel with a twist by the manufacturer. And the reason they do that is to put a spin on the bullet, gives you greater accuracy at longer distances, just like throwing the football. If you don't get a nice tight spiral, it goes end over end. You don't get it to your receiver. Similar thing with a bullet. Now, within those land and groove impressions are microscopic markings that are unique to that particular firearm. And those are what I'm comparing in order to make an identification.
All right. And based upon your training and experience, then, you made those identifications that you've previously testified to, correct?
Correct.
And you put those in a written report back in March of 2007, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, I'm going to hand you a 2-page document that's been marked for purposes of identification of State's Exhibit 86. You can take your gloves off. Make you sweat there. I wasn't sure if we have it open. Okay. And I'm going to ask you to look at that 2-page document. Tell this court if you recognize that.
Yes, I do.
All right. What is State's Exhibit number 86?
It is a copy of the report that I issued stating my findings.
All right. And first of all, does your signature appear on that document?
Yes, it does.
And is that a fair and accurate copy of the report you prepared in March of 2007 detailing the findings that you made between State's Exhibit 1 and the shell casings, or the cartridge casings, the fragments, and the projectiles that were turned into you or submitted to you?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Mr. Chappel, do you know if any of those projectiles or any of those fragments, or cartridge cases even, were what we would call hollow point ammunition?
Yes.
All right. All of them?
The bullets and fragments are all consistent with hollow point, and the submitted cartridges, or unfired bullets, as some people refer to them, were also hollow points.
All right. That's just a sort of layman's term, though, correct?
Correct.
All right. Okay. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Ross? Ross?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good to see you again, sir. Is it Chappel?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chappel, you have State's Exhibit 86 in front of you there, your report.
Yes, I do.
I want to direct your attention to your findings on page 2, items 4.1, 5.3, and 6.3.
Yes.
You examined copper bullet jacket fragments.
Yes.
And just so we're clear, when the prosecutor mentioned hollow points, there's a difference between a hollow point, a full metal jacket, and a partial metal jacket, right?
Yes, there is.
Explain that to the jury.
A full metal jacket bullet has a metal jacketing that is wrapped around the bullet, kind of like a Hershey's Kiss, with the foil on the outside. Most full metal jackets have the lead in the bottom exposed. With a jacketed hollow point, the jacketing is along the sides and the bottom of the bullet, and there is a cavity in the nose or front end of the bullet that is designed to expand on impact. A semi-jacketed bullet would have jacketing along the sides and the bottom, but not across the top.
Okay. And what kind are we dealing with in this case? What were your findings?
Hollow point.
Okay. Back to 4.1, 5.3, and 6.3 in your findings. You examined a copper bullet jacket fragment, correct?
Yes.
And a jacketed hollow point bullet. And you determined those to be .38 caliber?
Correct.
And the same thing with item 4.7, hollow point bullet fragment that you also determined to be .38 caliber?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take this opportunity for our mid-morning break. We'll take 15 minutes. Once we get your break, go down to the jury room. We'll call you up. Do not discuss this case among yourselves or anyone else. Do not form express